Good morning, viewers, and welcome to the 16th episode of Your Money, Your Taxes. Here at the studio, I have with me Mr. Lalit Abichandani, the owner of Abic CPAs. And my name is Paresh Shah from Paresh Shah Financial Services. Lalitji is a practicing CPA with 25 years experience in the US. He specializes in US taxation. He has been running a very successful practice in Manhattan. He and his firm provide tax services and tax planning for businesses as well as individuals. In addition to the regular trading businesses, his firm services the healthcare industry, IT industry, hospitality and entertainment industry. He has done hundreds of offshore voluntary disclosure and streamlined procedure cases and has become an expert in foreign bank account reporting and the US-India tax treaty. He's a CPA and tax advisor to businesses, professionals, Bollywood industry, and a lot of film personalities. His website is yourtaxadvisor.com. Welcome, Lalitji.
Thank you, Paresh Shah.
So we had covered in the previous episode the basics of entity formation. And before we go ahead, could you explain one more time LLCs and SCorps? Could you summarize that conversation for our viewers?
Yes, Paresh Ji, thank you very much for the great introduction. We talked about entity formation. So the most important part in that is there are four major factors that people should analyze before setting up corporations, and that is location, the type of entity, taxation, and setting up the entities. Again, in setting up the entities, there are four different types of entities that you can set up. You could have a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, or an LLC. Again, obviously in any of these entities, there is taxation issue that we need to discuss. So people have to know about what different types of taxations there are. There could be sales taxation, payroll taxes for employees, corporate taxes on the net profit on the company, or if it is a S corporation or an LLC, you end up paying personal taxes on the net profits of the company. So it's very important to understand this before you go in for formation of a company.
I understand, Lalitji, but from these four choices of entities, there is certain which are very popular and also tax efficient from the liability perspective and from the tax perspective. So can you just give our viewers the idea what would be the best thing in terms of liability and taxes?
Paresh Ji, there is no simple answer. We take down the details and we analyze and spend some time to understand what the client's details are, and then we make a decision. But having said that, the most popular these days is an LLC. In an LLC, you get liability protection, additional liability protection, and also there is advantage of it is minimum compliances as far as the regulations are concerned. So LLC has become more popular these days, and from a tax point of view, S corporation is more efficient.
Let's first go to the liability protection. Can you explain liability protection and why LLCs are the best formation for liability protection?
So Paresh Ji, in doing business, in both selling the products as well as providing services, you do have liability. US is a litigious society. So when you are doing this business, it is important that you should try and protect your personal assets. And in order to do that, you have to create these entities, either a corporation or an LLC. In an LLC, as I said, there are less regulations compared to a corporation. But it is important to maintain a separation between your personal transactions and corporate transactions. Also, in an LLC, you must have an operating agreement and try and follow the guidelines of an operating agreement. As long as you have done that, you will keep the separation from your personal assets. Also, as far as the finances are concerned, try and minimize or have just the business transactions within this LLC. In other words, don't mix your personal transactions into the business transaction. This commingling of these finances will defeat the purposes of having a separate entity. So it's very important to keep that separation.
Lalit, I agree. I've seen this so often, even in the people whom I interact with, that is, you commingle. For a business owner, it's like personal account and business account is like just two pockets, and they just end up using both. And I agree with you that liability protection is very important. Could you also highlight further what more can a business owner do to protect business assets?
Paresh, it is very important that when you are setting up this business, that you should have this additional protection. In addition to having an LLC, you should have proper insurances, business as well as liability insurances. Earlier in my practice, I saw some business owners literally losing their shirt in the liability lawsuits. So it's very important to have the additional insurance protection, and I'm sure you can help them in getting business insurances and also guide them accordingly to cover their not only inventory but the liability as well.
Absolutely, Lalit. You're so right that people do not pay adequate attention to this to the liability protection, and they should do that. Insurance protection is very important. So then the other topic which business owners, whenever they think of their CPAs, the next thing that comes to mind is taxation. What type of entity is best for having mitigating or having optimizing the taxes that you have to pay?
Taxation is very important no matter which entity do you have, whether you have sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation or an LLC. In each of these there are different types of taxes. As I said earlier, S corporation is more efficient, but each case is different. We analyze that and we try and minimize taxes in each of those areas.
Well, Lalitji, let me understand this. You mentioned that from the liability perspective, an LLC is a good entity, but from the tax perspective, the SCorp may be the efficient one. Business owners get really confused, and I would definitely put it out there to every business owner that before you take any further steps, you should consult a professional CPA like Lalitji in order to decide which entity. But Lalitji, for the benefit of our viewers today, can you give some ideas how to get the best of both these worlds?
Pareshji, there is no clear answer. As I said, we have to analyze the details and then make a decision. Both of these, the LLCs as well as the S corporations, they are basically flow-through entities, meaning you do not pay taxes at the entity level, you pay taxes at the personal level. And in an LLC, you pay, not only do you pay federal taxes, but you pay self-employment taxes on the entire net profit, versus in an S corporation, you have to take a salary, but whatever remaining net profit there is exempt from self-employment taxes. Now the self-employment taxes alone can be over 15%, and that could be a substantial savings. So even though it looks clearly that S corporation you can save money, but LLCs are more popular. So there is a combination. Sometimes we use that as well.
Okay. Lalitji, as a business owners approach people, they say, I want to eat the cake and have it too. So is there a way in which you can take advantages of the protection of an LLC and minimize the taxes through the S corporation?
Pareshji, you are absolutely right. Fortunately, there is. Within an LLC, we do have a few options that we can take. LLCs by default are partnerships, but there is an additional step that we can take and convert them from a tax point of view to a corporation or even an S corporation, meaning you form an LLC and then you choose to be taxed as a corporation, and then we classify it as a sub S corporation wherein on the net profits you do not pay self-employment taxes, and this way you have the best of both. You have an LLC, which is a liability protection, as well as you have tax savings in there as well.
So if I may say this in my way, you have an LLC, but it is filing like an S corporation.
That's right.
And therefore you get the best of both the worlds. Wow,
Absolutely.
that's great to know that that's available. We've covered liability protection and taxation, but if someone wants to incorporate or form an LLC, how long does it take? What's the money outflow required? What does it take to do all of this, Lalitji?
Pareshji, we have 52 different states, and 52 different states have different way of incorporating or forming an LLC. So it could take as minimum as 2 days, or it could take more than 4 or 5 weeks. So each state has different requirement, different timeline. It is difficult to pinpoint, but generally I would say somewhere it takes between about 1 week to 3 weeks, depending on the state. And again, on the capital requirement, the answer to that is, again, it depends on what type of business it is. Whether it's a personal service business, or is it a retail business, is it a wholesale business, does it require a big showroom? So the capital requirements vary from business to business. And in a personal service business, you could start your LLC and start from a basement with the very minimum capital. But if you are opening up a showroom, a fancy showroom, you will require heavy capital. Or if you have large wholesale business where you have inventory requirements, in that you will need a large capital, for which you will not only have to bring in your own capital, but you may have to get additional funding from your suppliers as well as from banks, etc. as well.
You mentioned banks, Lalitji. So can you, from a business owner's perspective, I mean, is the type of entity critical from a bank loan perspective, or is it just more to do with just how the structure is put in place, tax efficiency?
So it really doesn't matter whether you are an LLC or a corporation. The banks require collateral. The banks require they look at your credit history and your discipline of paying. In addition to that, they look at whether the company is properly capitalized or not. In addition to that, in wholesale environment, they look at your customers to see how creditworthy are your customers. So the bank wants to be protected. Now, whether the financing is from a bank, or in some cases we can apply from a small business bureau, wherein the requirements are a little more rigid than banks, but they do give you, they are more favorable to small businesses, and you can go for funding in there. But it doesn't matter whether it's an LLC or it is an S corporation.
All along we've been talking about the LLCs versus the corps, and SCorp in particular. But we also see that there are two types of corps. You mentioned about the SCorps and the CCorps. And I think that at some point you also mentioned in the previous episode that the CCorp may not be most efficient in terms of taxes. But yet people do form CCorp. So where is SCorp and where is CCorp? Can you take some time to highlight that for our viewers?
Absolutely. So the big difference between a CCorp and an SCorp is that a CCorp you pay double tax, meaning you pay tax at the entity level first, and out of the net profits, when you take those dividends out, you pay taxes again. So so the dividend tax is paid at the personal level. The corporate tax is paid on the net profit, versus in an S corporation or even an LLC, there is no tax on dividend. The taxation is basically on the net profits of the company. So that is the big difference. If you are a small business, generally we prefer to have LLCs and S corporation. But if it is a big public limited company with large number of shareholders, then obviously the C corporation is preferred. That's what these big companies are, because they have a large number of shareholders. In an S corporation, there is limitation of members that you can have. It is also limited to only green card holders and citizens.
Wow. Well, Lalitji, thank you so much. This has been valuable information. I'm sure our viewers are going to have lots of questions. So viewers, two things before we sign off. If you have any questions, please contact Lalitji or email him at lalitcpa@yourtaxadvisor.com. He'll be happy to give you a consultation as needed anytime. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Lalitji, thank you so much. I think we're going to come back to you with a lot more questions in the future on these same topics.
Thank you very much, Paresh ji, for having me.